So today we will be, from Friday noon, 3rd of July, we will be moving into some aspects of stage 3. The Deputy Premier will go into a bit more detail, but for example, wedding ceremonies will be up to 100 people. There will be contact community sports. There'll be no limits on spectators outside with social distancing. We'll be looking at, with businesses like cafes and pubs and restaurants and surf clubs and RSLs, that for small businesses under 200 square metres, the 1 person per 2 square metre rule will apply. So that'll mean more people coming in supporting our local small businesses across Queensland. And I know that's something that we have been speaking to the industry about. Casinos will be able to be open, and of course concert venues and theatres, 50% or 1 per 4 square metre rule will apply. Churches, I know how important this is, and places of worship, family households will be able to sit together as well. So that's all due to the tremendous work of Queenslanders. Today I want to address the issue of borders. Let me state from the outset, Queensland has very large concerns about the state of Victoria. There have been 250 cases in the past 7 days. Yesterday 75 and today 64. There is community transmission. There have been outbreaks in hotels, schools, healthcare, retail and a distribution centre. So, due to the current community transmission levels, the border with Victoria will remain closed and will be strengthened. Tougher measures will apply from this Friday, July 3, at 12 noon. Anyone who has travelled from Victoria, including Queenslanders, will be prevented from entering or will have to quarantine at a hotel at their own expense for 2 weeks. We just can't risk removing border restrictions for people coming from areas of Victoria right now. And I hope Queenslanders understand why I am saying that. I'm not alone in saying that. I understand the South Australian Premier also has concerns, but these are very big concerns. We want to help Victoria out. Let me also state that we've sent our Deputy Chief Health Officer down to Victoria. Dr Young will also mention to you that we are prepared to give even more support to Victoria. And I think that I speak on behalf of other leaders when we want to do everything we can to help Victoria get this community transmission under control. In relation to the other states and territories, Tasmania, South Australia, West Australia, New South Wales, Northern Territory and ACT are all in a similar position to Queensland. So from July the 10th, people will be allowed to travel into Queensland after filling in a border declaration. This border declaration is to ensure that no one has travelled to Victoria in the past 14 days. If you falsify a document, you will face strict penalties and fines up to $4,000. There is also one proviso here, and I hope Queensland families will understand this. If the Chief Health Officer reviews any state or territory at any time and there is outbreaks of community transmission like Victoria, we may have to take further actions. So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. We don't take these decisions lightly, and the Chief Health Officer has provided government with very clear advice. My number one concern is to protect Queenslanders and Queensland families. That's what you support me to do, and that is what I wake up every single day wanting to ensure I do the best for this state. These decisions have not been taken lightly. They have been given careful consideration from the Chief Health Officer and from government. We believe we have the balance right. We will do everything to preserve Queensland's good record at preventing the spread of COVID-19 in our state. We are in a very good position at the moment, but we know at any time anything could change. We have good systems in place, and we must do everything we can to help Victoria during this time. I'll hand over to the Deputy Premier, then the Chief Health Officer, and then we're happy to take questions at the end. Thank you, Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Premier. As the Premier outlined, there's no further cases of COVID-19 in Queensland. That means that since the 1st of June, when we went to stage 2 restrictions, we've had just 9 new cases, 7 of those from overseas and 2 acquired interstate, leaving us with just 2 active cases and only 1 in hospital. That's in stark contrast, of course, to what we have seen recently in Victoria. Today, they surpassed twice the number of total cases as we have had here in Queensland since the outbreak commenced. They've had more locally acquired cases than Queensland has had in total. They've had more than 6 times the number of cases where the source of the infection could not be identified than we have had. They have more than 288 active cases right now, compared to just 2 in Queensland and 7 in New South Wales. They're managing multiple outbreaks on multiple fronts: schools, hotels, healthcare facilities, workplaces. I want to emphasise that there is no interstate rivalry here. We're all in this together, and we all need to work together. It's in all of our interests for us to suppress this virus across the country, including right now in Victoria. We have now offered and sent our Deputy Chief Health Officer to Victoria to assist them. We are undertaking testing here every single day of Victorian-taken samples. We have called today for expressions of interest for 40 nurses who we will deploy to Victoria to assist them. This virus does not respect state borders, and so we must enforce them. These new, stricter rules will ensure that we contain the virus in Victoria. Our message to Queenslanders is please do not go there. Our message to Victorians is please do not come here until these outbreaks are under control. We do not want to bring those cases here. We want to be able to use our resources in Victoria to assist them there. I want to thank the Chief Health Officer and the Premier for holding firm on these decisions. If we had relaxed our borders sooner, as some called on us to do, these cases would be here now. We would be battling these cases here now. It's easy for those on the sidelines and even those in Canberra to make calls, but the responsibility for the health of Queenslanders rests with their government, their Premier, their Chief Health Officer. These new restrictions will apply to people travelling from and in Victoria since after midday the 3rd of July. On to the good news, however. Our plan to allow Queensland to unite and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic is all about getting businesses open and getting people back into jobs. From the 10th of July, visitors from states other than Victoria will be able to apply for a border pass and travel here. This will allow the recommencement of interstate tourism to Queensland from the 10th of July. Border controls will continue to apply and strict penalties will apply for people who lie to us about any travel to Victoria. We are also able now to bring forward stage 3 of our easing of local restrictions here in Queensland. We're bringing them forward by 1 week, as well as making them stronger. Our limits on private gatherings will increase from a maximum of 20 to a maximum of 100 from the 3rd of July, from this Friday. That's 100 guests at weddings, funerals, house parties and fitness classes. From Friday, Queenslanders will be able to order a beer at the bar, play the pokies, order a counter meal or go to the casino. Kids sport will be back. Contact sport will be back, as well as spectators. And I know many parents like me will be looking forward to busy Saturdays racing from one soccer field to another. In hospitality, pubs, clubs, restaurants and cafes, the limit of 20 people per space will be lifted. There will be no maximum of number of people per space or venue, provided they have 4 square metres of floor space per patron. In smaller venues, they will be allowed one person per 2 square metres, up to a maximum of 50 for venues between 100 and 200 square metres. That's smaller venues. In stadiums, we will allow them up to 50% of capacity or 25,000 spectators, whichever is the lesser. All of these new restrictions, though, require ongoing adherence to physical distancing. That means 1.5 metres between household groups. So when we say we're lifting the limit on spectators at outdoor field sports, we will still be asking family groups to maintain 1.5 metres between themselves. Similarly, at churches, we'll be urging family groups to maintain 1.5 metres between their family groups. These restrictions, as well as the border restrictions, will be regularly assessed by our Chief Health Officer, and will continue to take her advice about what we can do to keep Queenslanders safe, while also allowing more businesses to open up, more economic activity and more Queenslanders back into their jobs.
So no new cases in Queensland overnight, which is excellent. And it's very important that we continue to maintain what we've put in place in Queensland. So it's important that people continue, if they're sick, to stay at home and get tested, because that will give us the sign whether we've got any concerns anywhere in our community. This is a virus. We're not going to be able to keep it out. We just have to recognise it as quickly as possible when it happens here in Queensland. So that is critical. Then people do need to maintain some of those very strict processes to protect themselves. So that is maintaining social distancing, maintaining that 1.5 metre distance. So wherever you are, if you're able to do that, that's a really important strategy. And again, it's very important, if you're sick, stay at home, because you won't spread the virus then. Now, we have seen what's happened in Victoria, and all states and territories are doing their absolute best to assist Victoria in every way possible, because we know that if there's an outbreak in one state, if we can't maintain it within that state, it can then spread. So there are quite a few things that we all need to do. The first is that it's humans that will spread this virus, so it's important that people don't go there, and it's important that Victorians don't come to Queensland. They have got so many cases there in their community that it is a real risk. So that's been put in place, and that border between Queensland and Victoria has been strengthened. Then we need to, and I've certainly worked with people in Queensland to support Victoria in every way possible. So Dr. Sonia Bennett, who's acted as my deputy and has been the Director of Communicable Diseases in Queensland for a number of years, and indeed has chaired the Communicable Diseases Network of Australia for Australia during this pandemic, has agreed and is now in Victoria. She's there today assisting them. Plus, we've offered other staff, and today I've put out a call seeking volunteers from amongst our nurses to go down and assist. Every single state and territory is doing that. That's the most important thing we can actually do to protect Queenslanders today, is to help Victoria to get on top of their many outbreaks. They have got a large number of active outbreaks happening there in their state, mainly in Melbourne. All of those things are really important. Now, at the same time, because we've not had any cases in Queensland, indeed in the last week we've had that one gentleman who was repatriated from Papua New Guinea, we can open up what we're doing within the state. As long as people remember to not go to Victoria and potentially bring the virus back, we can open up what we're doing. So that means we can now have 100 people in gatherings. We can have more people in all of our pubs and clubs and restaurants, playing sport. All of those areas, all of those restrictions have been significantly lifted. There are a few still in place. So that 1 person per 4 square metre rule, because that has stood us so well, because that's about density. It's about not having too many people together and meaning that people can still maintain that 1.5 metre distance if you've got people spread out. So that means everywhere can go to that 1 person per 4 square metres. Now, for the very small places, because we know that's not really viable, we've encouraged people to have 1 per 2. And the reason we can do that is that the numbers are smaller, so there's a cap of 50 there. The numbers are smaller so we can effectively contact trace, and because businesses have all had the time to prepare now so that they know how to capture people's details so they can provide them rapidly to the contact tracers that would need to contact those up to 50 people. So that's in place. Then we've seen the stadiums work very, very effectively. They've done a brilliant job at managing that social distancing. So now we're going to open that up to other venues because we've learnt from the stadiums and the assistance they've given us in about where they've seen the rub points, so that we've now been able to work with other venues about how they can increase the numbers of people in those venues. So this has been an exercise that we've all learnt as we've gone through what's worked, where we need to change things, where we need to tighten things up. And I, of course, thank the Queensland community for how they've engaged and how they've been involved. It's been very important. Thank you.